All right, we continue to follow breaking news in college football in terms of the AP Top 25. Alabama, which came into their game 2-touchdown favorites on the road in Tallahassee against Florida State, drops to number 21 in the latest AP poll, down 13 spots after Florida State beat them, and the Noles cracking the AP Top 25 after not being ranked. Here's 21 through 25. The Utes also cracked the top 25, but you see the teams that fall there, which includes Alabama, the most spots. All right. Back here with Chip Patterson and Brad Crawford here to talk about Alabama. So the conversation continues to be put on Kalen DeBoer, Chip Patterson, and I know you talked about it on the Cover 3 podcast of like, you know, and we're going to talk about whether Florida State can maintain this too, but it's like, bad sign from this game, or is this one of those like bad sign of things to come for the Crimson Tide? Where do you land there?
Bad sign of things to come. This is a trend at this point. When you have 14 games of a sample size, and in those 14 games, there have been 4 times when Alabama objectively has the more talented roster, and you've gone out and you've lost. And I'm talking about the 4 times that Alabama has been a double-digit favorite, and they have lost the game outright. At the 24/7 Sports, we've got the total team talent composite. Alabama was number 1 heading into the country. We've got NFL draft picks on both sides of the ball, on both lines of scrimmage. This was supposed to be a strength for Kalen DeBoer's group, and they got absolutely pushed around. That is a mentality. That is an attitude thing. That is about preparation. You've got some of the quotes coming out of post-game, out of the media availabilities with Kalen DeBoer, where he is unhappy with some of the fan treatment of the players, as I was reading, and I don't think that we have. I don't think we are mirroring the Alabama that I was expecting. I was expecting an Alabama that was going to be able to dominate at the lines of scrimmage, kind of like those 2015, 2016 era Alabama defenses, and that's just not at all what we've seen. And with the schedule that Alabama has, man, they've got to be able to play to their talent, and that's just not something that we've seen a lot.
We're going to get to that schedule, and I'm going to ask you guys about that in just a second. But, Brad, in terms of Alabama, I remember having multiple segments talking about, boy, is Alabama actually flying under the radar, that they could poised to become a national championship contender. Then we see this completely flip on its head in just one game. What do you think about the fall here for the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, I can't believe I took the Crimson Tide to make the playoff this season 2 weeks ago. And I'm no longer drinking any red Kool-Aid, because this is not it for Kalen DeBoer. I don't know if he's maybe too nice of a guy to win big in the SEC, but you are what your coach is, right? You sort of model that on game day, and Alabama looked soft Saturday. Let's face it, there were several times where players were loafing. Deontay Lawson coming back from that ACL, he was noticeably slower than previously in his career, and I think it hurt the Crimson Tide defense. After that opening drive, where Ty Simpson made some plays, they ran the ball hard. After that, Ryan Grubb had a long day as Bama's OC. The secondary for Alabama so talented. It was on its heels all day. This is closer, fellas, to a 7-5 team than a 10-2 team. And I just never envisioned that during the preseason, based on all the hype we heard coming out of Tuscaloosa, good scrimmage play from Ty Simpson, and that sort of thing. And this is not a great Florida State team, certainly deserving of a top 25 ranking after that win, but I don't think it's a squad that's going to compete for a playoff spot. That's how bad Alabama is right now.
And I think that's reflective of the polls. Again, I mentioned the other top 10 teams. They only moved slightly because they played relatively well, close games, competitive, which we didn't see in Tallahassee. Chip, you brought up the schedule, and then, Brad, I can have you follow here. Again, this was an argument for this team and some of the fringe SEC teams, 9-3. Is it going to be good enough to get into the CFP? Last year, Alabama had the problem with Vanderbilt. So if we take a look at their schedule here, what are we thinking in terms of the SEC as they have a couple of games to get ready for Georgia to kick things off at the end of the month, Chip?
Yeah, I'm thinking that this is really problematic, and a 9-3 argument might not even be relevant. Tennessee was able to go and hang 45 points with Joey Aguilar. South Carolina, of course, with a strong statement against Virginia Tech. Nick Harbor showing that he's just an absolute problem. LSU, we're talking about potentially being in the conversation as the #1 team in the country. And, oh, yeah, you've got to play Georgia in Athens. When Brad says, more like a 7-5 team, that's not a crazy thought. thought, because if this is a group that might look really good coming off the bus, but then not as good once you blow the whistle, then you are going to lose. When the margins are so thin in the expanded Southeastern Conference, there's just no breaks all throughout the schedule. And unfortunately, this Alabama team, man, they've got to show that last step, that step that is very tough for us to quantify in terms of looking at a team on paper. And that is about your preparation. And that is why Kalen DeBoer is under so much pressure in Tuscaloosa.
I mean, just those road games are brutal for Alabama. At Georgia, that's probably a double-digit game right now as far as odd makers go. Then you go to Missouri. If Missouri beats Kansas this weekend and then tops South Carolina, they're going to be 5-0 hosting Alabama. You know how hyped Missouri is going to be for that game? Then you've got to go to South Carolina a few weeks later. That's a hornet's nest at Williams-Brice Stadium, having to deal with Lenora Sellers and a defense right now that can't tackle. Then you've got a road trip to the Iron Bowl. And we haven't even mentioned LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, other ranked teams in the SEC. I think the 7-5 finish for Alabama looks a whole lot better right now than projecting a 10-2, because there's just widespread problems, and they do not have a schedule SEC-wise that's favorable to success.